No, it's not your imagination. It's not even an opinion anymore. Grocery store chains made money hand over fist during the pandemic and have continued to enjoy huge profits ever since, while all of us pay extremely high prices. That is what the federal government has just determined after a years-long study conducted by the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC. A study was just released this week titled Feeding America in a Time of Crisis. And it was really meant to focus on supply chains and how the pandemic really exposed the problems and vulnerabilities we have in this country. But it also examined how those supply chain disruptions impacted major grocery stores and all of us, the folks who were just struggling to find toilet paper. Do you remember that? But the key takeaway from this report is that we all, the consumer, suffered a lot during the pandemic. And turns out it's still happening to this day. The report says consumers are still facing the negative impacts of the pandemic's price hikes, as the Commission's report finds that some in the grocery retail industry seem to have used rising costs as an opportunity to further raise prices to increase their profits, which remain elevated today. The report says food and beverage retailers basically exploited product shortages in the supply chain during the pandemic and raised their prices more than needed to cover the added costs, and then just kept those prices high once the supply chain recovered. Further, the report says bigger retailers use their marketing power and their leverage to widen their advantage over smaller competitors, which also contributed to increased prices. The report found revenues increased more than 6% over total costs in 2021. That's higher than the most recent peak in 2015, when revenues increased 5.6% over costs. And then the first 3 quarters of 2023, retailer profits increased even more, with revenue reaching 7% over total costs. The FTC says this data disproves the food and beverage retailers' claims that the reason for the increased prices that we're all seeing is just because their costs are going up. Yes, of course, their costs probably did go up, but the FTC says it is unreasonable to think those costs have continued to go up that much year over year since 2021. The FTC report says these elevated profit levels discovered in this report should absolutely be investigated further by not only the FTC, but also congressional lawmakers. So if you want to read the Feeding America in a Time of Crisis report for yourself, I will email it out to you in my Newsgirl News Roundup email, so make sure you sign yourself up.